So I walk into the waiting room of intensive care, and a bunch of people that are crying. Everyone there has been crying if they're not crying now. Red eyes, deep concern. And people get up and they come and they hug me and they're crying on my shoulder. And they're looking to me to help, some kind of hope. Um, and I, I didn't know what I was doing there. Like, who am I? I'm a 20-year-old kid, and they've called me to come in to the hospital. It's three kids, all under 6 years old. They're in a house fire, and they were not doing well. Smoke inhalation. Uh, One of the kids had breathed in, the heat and damaged his lungs. They're in intensive care in the burn unit. So it was scary. And Regina, their mother, she wasn't there in the waiting room. So yeah, it was an intense experience, and I didn't feel prepared for it. I didn't feel ready for it at all. But there I was. So, hi, this is Rev. This is Sunday Stories. It's on a Monday today because yesterday was it was weird. There was like water coming out of the sky. I didn't know what that was. We had a little bit of flooding at the house. Had to do a bunch of work, 3 hours in the rain and the cold, and I was soaking wet, whatever. But I wasn't able to do the video yesterday. But this is Sunday Stories on Monday. Thank you for tuning in. And I tell a story every Sunday. On Mondays, I will be doing a Bible study. Mondays in Matthew, I'll be going through the Gospel of Matthew in a very like strategic, line by line, deep dive into the socio-political implications of Matthew and what it means to us. So hope you can join me for that. So if you hang out till the end, I'll finish the story of what happened in the hospital. But where this all started was my parents had moved up to Sacramento, and I lived in the Corona Riverside area in the Inland Empire of Southern California, and they'd moved up north, and so I was 20, and I had an 18-year-old brother and a 16-year-old brother that weren't going to go. They just were not going to move up to Sacramento. So a 14-year-old brother and a 9-year-old brother, they went with my parents. They're up in Sacramento. And my dad filled out the paperwork and took out the rent on an apartment. We had to pay the rent, but my dad did the security deposit, and it was all on his credit and everything like that. So me and my two brothers, we moved into this apartment. It was 2 bedrooms. I got the bedroom alone, and yeah, we just started living away from our parents for the first time. I kind of felt a lot of responsibility. I was the older brother. I had to, take care of my younger brothers, but they didn't want to be taken care of. Let's just say they were going through their rebellious phase, and they, like most of us gents and boys, they did everything all the way. So they were really not in a place where they would listen to anything that I had to say. But as we lived there, this group of punk rock kids were at our house all the time. I loved it, man. I was a punk rocker, when I was a kid. I just loved being around these kids. Um, but I was looking at things from a different perspective now. I'd become a Christian. I was one of those, born again, uh, excited, and a new convert. I was a new convert, and telling everybody about Jesus and trying to save everybody from hell, and that whole bit. Uh, and so, yeah, there was a little bit of tension between me and my brothers over this idea, but these punk rock kids are hanging out, and I just loved being around them, kind of reminding me of my own younger days. Um, but I learned that they're homeless essentially. They're living in the basement of an abandoned house, and they didn't have homes to go to, and yeah, and it started gnawing on my brain. I'd read this book called In His Steps, and it's essentially where the "What Would Jesus Do" thing came from, and uh, the story. It's the story of a church that has this really intense experience, and from that, a group of the people in the church make this covenant with each other that they won't do anything without asking the question, what would Jesus do if he were in this position? And though it was a kind of cheesy book, and let's face it, a lot of kind of Christian stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it is kind of cheesy. But it really influenced me, man. It had a profound impact. And so me and my brother-in-law, we made this pact with one another that we were going to do the same thing. Funny thing is that the some of the older people and elders in the church took us aside and tried to they tried to straighten us out. Obviously you can't live like Jesus did. You just need to be a good citizen and get a haircut and have a good job and go to church on Sundays. That's what you're supposed to do. Just kind of push this. What would Jesus do? Push that aside. That's a bit much, guys. Which, yeah, I thought was kind of weird. But anyways, I was thinking this way, and these homeless punk rock kids are at my house almost every day. Friends of my brothers. What am I supposed to do in light of these kids that don't have a house? I'm asking myself, if Jesus had a house and there were people that didn't, would Jesus share his home with them? And to me, the obvious answer was yes. Yes, he would. And so that's what I did. And they moved in. So there was 6 of us living, I'm sorry, 7 of us living in a 2-bedroom apartment. The funny thing is, I didn't ask myself, what would Jesus do if his father rented an apartment for him and was on the hook financially for it? Would he let a bunch of homeless, drug-using punk rockers live with him? I didn't ask that question. Of course not. That's dad, and I'm being a good Christian and reaching out to the homeless punk rockers. So they moved into the apartment, and it looked just like you would imagine it. There's no art on the walls. The couches are dirty. There's stuff all over the floor, and in the kitchen there was this big pot of grease, oil, whatever you want to call it. But we would change it out regularly, like every 2 or 3 weeks. And in the refrigerator there was all these frozen burritos and French fries and tater tots and anything you could throw in the grease on the stove. And there was Top Ramen. 10 cents a package, you have a nice warm meal. It's like the official food of homeless punk rockers. But the crazy thing was the walls just had this kind of sticky slipperiness to them because of the constant cooking of grease. It was like we were a fast food restaurant. And but these kids moved in, and there was 4 of them. 2 of them were brothers, and I'll just call them Big Brother and Mohawk Boy. And there's Tri-Hawk, who exactly what it sounds like. He had a mohawk right up the middle and 2 out to the side, three mohawks, and yeah, he was a lot of fun. He at one point he shaved his eyebrows off and he looked like an alien. But I guess that's what you do when you're a punk rock kid. One of the kids was named Fingers. Fingers had the curly brown hair and these beautiful, big, beautiful eyes with these eyelashes that looked like he was wearing the fake eyelashes that people wear nowadays. And he was real popular with the ladies. But then there was the brothers, and typical brother thing, man. If you touched one of those brothers, the other one's gonna get you. You know, they were very protective of one another, but they weren't protective of one another together, right? There was a lot of rivalry there. And the younger brother, Mohawk Boy, he was one of those people that just had this charisma, this way about him. Wherever he went, he just kind of got all the eyes staring on him. He actually looked better with a mohawk than he did with regular haircut. He was this very attractive young man. He was in good shape. He used to wear his leather jacket over no shirt, so people could see his muscles. And then the older brother was just a tough kid, and they both had boxed. I think the younger brother was actually even a better boxer. So the older brother was, in this unusual place where he was kind of living in the shadow of his younger brother. And so there was a lot of rivalry there between the two. And there was a lot of anger. They were raised in this crazy Pentecostal holiness church, and every time they would misbehave, which let's face it, teenagers misbehave. Every time they'd misbehave, their parents would bring them to the church, and the church would cast demons out of them, and they had a really kind of a difficult childhood. They were angry, and they didn't have any trust for the church, and so there was a lot going on there. And the oldest brother would tend to, with the help of some chemicals, he would stay up for 9, 10, sometimes 12 days. He'd just stay up the whole time. And when you get past about 3 days of not sleeping, you start going a little bit crazy. And he would get really paranoid and just kind of violent and weird. I remember one time that he was hiding behind the couch with a pellet gun, and anyone who tried to come in the door, he was shooting at him, and he was screaming and yelling. And then he went to his room and slept for 3 days, and he came out, and he was normal again for a little while. It was like a pattern. One time, we were standing, talking in the living room, and older brother opens the door, and he's just staring at Mohawk Boy, just staring at him and agitated. You could see something's going on. He'd been up for a while, and we were kind of used to that. But then all of a sudden, he takes off running, full sprint, and he just, bam, he hits Mohawk boy, as hard as he can, right in the face at a full run, goes straight into the bedroom, slams the door shut, and locks the door. And, Mohawk boy, he decides he's going to break the door down. It took two of us to hold him back. He was upset. But then, the older brother just went to sleep and stayed asleep for a while and came back normal. So this is going on, and you can imagine the atmosphere there was crazy. There was one rule. Nobody sleeps in my bed except me. I sleep in my bed, nobody else. And Fingers broke that rule. And not only did he break the rule, he had help breaking the rule, if you understand my meaning. And that was kind of a drag, but you kind of expect that, punk rock kids, they're not really into rules. So we're in this situation, and Mohawk boy, the pretty charismatic one, he starts spending a little bit of time with this woman who had 3 kids, and her boyfriend, who was the father of those 3 kids, didn't like it, which makes sense. So when I wasn't home, this guy and his little brother came into the house, and there was this big fight. And when I got home, there was this big hole in the drywall where someone had got thrown into the wall. There was a broken window. It was just really messed up. And apparently the cops came. There was a sign in the window that said "Black Hole," and it's from a song by one of our favorite bands, the Adolescents, the Kids of the Black Hole, and it kind of summed up what was going on there. These homeless kids are there, they're partying, they're living wrongly, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's what the song's about. So we became Kids of the Black Hole. And it was kind of like that, man. It was pretty intense. It was so intense that I would get up at 4:30 in the morning before I went to work, and I'd pray for an hour before I went to work, and I'd pray for the house, I'd pray for the kids. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing what I'm supposed to do. If you're gonna do the one thing like Jesus, you're probably supposed to do the other thing Jesus did. So I'm serious about this stuff, and back in the day, I was this crazy, fundamentalist kind of guy, doing the best I can. Cops were there all the time, usually when I wasn't home. Rough. I remember one day, there's just this big commotion outside. The kids aren't in the house, so I go to see what's going on, and they're squared off with another group of guys, and this one guy's just kind of going crazy. His shirt's off, he's yelling and screaming, and Mohawk boy takes off his leather jacket, and he's ready to throw down, and I jump in the middle. I'm gonna be the peacemaker, and I get in the middle and settle things down. And out of respect for me, the kids of the Black Hole just kind of backed off, and they were letting me kind of try to calm things down. But man, this other guy, he was not calming down. He was angry, and eventually I started getting angry. And apparently I don't hide my emotions very well, so I'm getting this anger in my face, and he starts, yelling, "You want some? You want some of this? I got something for you. I'll shoot your ass. I'll shoot your ass." And he's jumping around, and I'm starting to, I'm basically thinking, I'm gonna take you down and pound you out before you shoot me, but I didn't, and I started worrying that maybe the guys didn't respect me anymore because I didn't beat this guy up. But I think I did the right thing. Eventually, we get evicted. Go figure, right? 7 people living in a house that's meant for 2 or 3. We get evicted, uh, and everyone disperses. Uh, the the fingers I think was bumming around on couches, and eventually he wound up going to jail. Um, I think Trihawk moved home. The brothers were they were just kind of moving around for a bit, and they wound up moving in with this gal, and my brother was homeless for a while. Um, and eventually he stayed with his girlfriend, and my youngest brother moved up to Sacramento for a while. And so everyone had dispersed. I was living with my brother-in-law, who wasn't my brother-in-law yet, but he became my brother-in-law. And yeah, the whole thing was a failure, man. The whole thing was a failure. I wind up getting evicted. My dad's mad at me because he has to spend a bunch of money. My brother had fallen asleep in his truck and totaled his truck, and then he left it in impound. And my dad thought I should have taken care of that. And it was just a mess. I felt horrible. I felt like I screwed everything up. But then, I think maybe a year later, I get a phone call, and there had been a fire at the house. Regina and the 2 brothers, they had gotten out of the house, but then they went back in the house. It took a while to get the kids out. The fire wasn't in the kids' room, but things got pretty bad in there, and the kids wind up in the burn unit in intensive care. And I get this call to come to the hospital. Regina asked for them to call me because I was the only pastor person that she knew. I found out later, she said, your brother is the only pastor I ever met that ain't full of shit. But I wasn't really a pastor. I was doing some stuff with the youth group, and I was leading and stuff like that, but I wasn't a pastor. And I walk into this hospital, and all these people are looking to me like I'm going to do something, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I've never been in this situation before, and these kids are in bad shape. What do I do? And I did what I thought I should do. I walked to the nurses station, and it took a while. Someone coded, and everyone was rushing in, and I was just praying it wasn't one of the boys. I didn't know what was going on. Eventually, the nurse comes back, and she says, "Can I help you?" Yeah, I'm Pastor John. And she goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Everyone's been waiting for you." She takes me into another room, and they put these kind of weird pants on me, and this overcoat, and they put a hairnet on my hair, and they put a mask on my face, and they put these weird things over my boots so that there was no contamination, because these kids were burned and their lungs were messed up, and if there was any infection, they were in trouble. On the way in, the doctor met me, and he told me, "Look, you need to stay a little bit away. You can't touch the kids. You're the only person that's allowed in besides their parents." And things are not looking good. The youngest probably isn't going to make it through the night. That's my first trip to the hospital to pray for people. And it's a kid who might not make it through the night. Well, it was intense, and I walk into the room, and Regina comes running over to me, and she's crying and she's so upset. Obviously, how could you not be? And she was looking to me for comfort, and she was hoping that maybe my God could do something. And the father greeted me, that they had called a truce because obviously something major was going on, and I just walked over to the kids. Now, normally, when I pray for somebody, I gently put my hands on them, but in this case, I wasn't allowed to touch them. So I kind of, the hover hand where your arms are around the shoulder, but you don't want to touch the gal because, she might think that you're being fresh. So I'm hover handing prayer, just don't really touch them. And I pray. And back then, I believed that if you pray, God answered. Now, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if prayer works at all. I think it does. That's why I do it. But, sometimes prayer works. More often than not, it doesn't work, and you kind of don't know what's going on, and it's rough. This whole prayer thing is a little bit rough, but back then it was just like, you pray, God answers. And so I prayed, and I said goodbye. I hugged all the people in the waiting room, and I went home. The next day, they said, you can take the two oldest kids home, and the youngest is doing so well, we think you'll be able to take him home tomorrow. And they were able to take him home tomorrow. He wasn't going to make it through the night, and the next day they say, you can bring him home tomorrow. I don't know if that was prayer or not. At the time, I believed it, and I kind of believe it now, but I don't know. All I know is these coincidences, they don't happen if I don't pray. And if they do pray, if I do pray, maybe the coincidence happens. So I prayed, and this beautiful thing happened. And a number of the kids there asked me to pray with them, particularly the brothers, because they wanted to return to Jesus. And so I prayed with them, prayed with anyone that wanted me to, and I went home. And yeah, it was this beautiful thing. But not only that, but all of a sudden, I became this kind of unofficial chaplain of the whole kind of punk rock scene in Corona. And they called me the Rev, which is my nickname all the way till today. They call me the Rev. It was a kind of ironic kind of, you're not like any Rev we've ever met before, but that's why they call me the Rev, the punk rockers. You got to have nicknames. And I wound up doing some funerals for people. I wound up doing some weddings for punk rock weddings are fun, man. Yeah, it was just this amazing result. This is the thing. I met God. My understanding of God. I met God in the black hole, trying to live out this crazy idea of what would Jesus do? How do we walk in Jesus' steps? And through that, I met God. Met God in the black hole. And I think that that's where we often meet God, is in the black hole, where everything seems wrong. And I met God there. And I think that if you're watching, you might meet God there too. And I invite you to do that. Look, I just thank you for walking through this journey with me. It was a very intense occurrence, and thanks for for being a part of it. If you like this, please share it. I really want people to kind of hear this. Honestly, it's a different way of being a Christian. I want people to hear about that. I want to challenge people. And also, if you can and please comment, ask me questions, argue with me, I don't care. Just be a part of this conversation, and like and follow and the whole bit. That'll help me out. Help me to get this message out. If you're interested in Bible study, intense Bible study, join me on Mondays today, and Mondays in Matthew, and come back for more stories on Sunday. Sunday stories is something that I think, if you study the Bible but you're not living it out, I don't think you're getting it right. So, and honestly, I don't think you necessarily have to be a Christian to understand a lot of the concepts that Jesus was talking about, and to live them out. So again, thank you for being with me, and I just hope that you were blessed by this story, and I hope that maybe you'll share it, and for sure, drop me a line in the comments and say hello. So until later, thanks for being with me, and remember, Rev loves you.